The sun had not yet fully risen on June 4, 1942, when silence hovered above the vast Pacific like a breath held before a scream. Below the clouds, the fate of the world was being reshaped, not by nations or empires alone, but by men who dared to fly into fire with nothing but hope, training, and the memory of those who had died before them. Aboard the USS Enterprise and the USS Yorktown, sailors and pilots prepared for what they could feel, if not yet see, was coming. They didn't speak much that morning. There was little need. The sea smelled of oil and salt, and the decks were still wet from dawn's condensation. But beneath that was something older, resolve. These were men forged in the flames of pearl, harbor's shame and the coral sea's smoke, men who had seen the might of the Japanese Navy and understood that this battle, this hour, would either mark a turning point or bury them all in steel coffins beneath the waves. The intelligence had come from men behind. Typewriters and wiretapping stations, code breakers, unsung and unnoticed, who had cracked the Japanese Navy's plan. They knew the enemy was coming, knew they would strike at Midway, but knowing was not enough. The men in the air would have to make that knowledge matter. At first light, American PBYs spotted the Japanese invasion force. It was massive. 4 fleet carriers, hundreds of aircraft, veteran pilots, and admirals who had never known defeat. But they were not invincible. The American carriers launched everything they had. Dive bombers, torpedo squadrons, fighters, all roaring into the sky like arrows from a trembling bow. Among them were the Dauntless dive bombers, manned by young men with steel nerves and leather helmets, whose names would soon be etched into the ocean's history. The first wave was slaughtered. Torpedo Squadron 8, led by Lieutenant Commander John Waldron, flew low and slow in obsolete TBD Devastators. They knew they were bait. They flew anyway. One by one, they were cut down by Zero fighters. The sea caught their wreckage like a cradle of fire and blood. Only one man, Ensign George Gay, survived, floating in the water and watching what would come next. And what came was thunder. High above, through broken cloud, Lieutenant Commander Wade. McCluskey's dive bombers had finally found the enemy fleet, not by radar, not by map, but by instinct and sheer will. The Japanese carriers were caught at their most vulnerable. Planes on deck, bombs stacked, fuel lines open. McCluskey and his men dove. The sky exploded. The Dauntlesses screamed down in near vertical drops, their dive brakes open, their eyes locked on target. The roar of the engines, the rattle of flak, the smoke, the screams. It was chaos wrapped in precision. Bombs hit Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu almost simultaneously. Flames erupted. Black smoke billowed like the breath of death itself, and sailors ran across melting steel decks that no longer had a future. The Japanese had no time to react. It had taken minutes, just minutes, to change everything. By the end of that hour, 3 Japanese carriers were dead in the water, their crews either burning, drowning, or gone beneath the waves. But the battle wasn't over. Hiryu, the last carrier, struck back. Her planes attacked Yorktown, crippling her with bombs and torpedoes. The crew fought bravely, sealing off compartments, launching counterstrikes, keeping her afloat long after the damage should have sunk her. But the final blow came later, and Yorktown would be lost. Yet in return, American dive bombers found Hiryu and sent her to join her sisters in the deep. All 4 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, were gone. 4 floating cities, 4 engines of empire, now twisted metal at the bottom of the Pacific. And then came the silence again, the kind that follows something irreversible. The surviving pilots flew back to their carriers, many low on fuel, blood on their uniforms, and smoke trailing their wings. Some never made it. Others landed on decks strewn with damage and oil, and some simply disappeared into the ocean, never to be seen again. But what they had done would echo for generations. The Japanese Navy had lost its offensive edge. The momentum of the war shifted. Midway did not end the Pacific War, but it ended Japan's dominance. From that point forward, the United States would push back, inch by inch, island by island, toward Tokyo Bay. For those who survived, the memories would never fade. The sound of diving engines, the sight of ships breaking apart, the smell of burning fuel and human loss. It stayed with them. For the families who waited back home, telegrams would soon arrive with words like missing, lost at sea, or simply killed in action. But those men were not forgotten. Their courage, their timing, their selfless sacrifice, it rewrote history. And as the sun set on June 4th, casting golden light on a bruised and battered ocean, a truth became clear. Sometimes, the future of the world depends not on armies, but on a handful of young men who are willing to fly into fire and fall with honor.